The next guest on the Giant Minds podcast with me is Dan Pritchard from Tech Southwest and Program Agency. Dan's a really key figure here in the Southwest tech sector, real super connector, knows a lot of people and does a huge amount of work to bring together lots of different organisations to get conversations moving and to get the discussion taking us to the next place that we want to get to. So I really hope you find this conversation engaging and interesting, particularly if you're from the local region. So Dan, welcome. Thanks very much for coming and joining us on the Giant Minds podcast.
Delighted to be here.
Do you want to start off just by giving us a little bit of background about you, what you do, what's brought you here?
Yeah, okay, cool. I'll do the very quick version because the long version is just boring. But two things. I run Tech Southwest, the regional cluster organisation for the tech sector in the southwest of England. The clue is in the title, Tech Southwest. And I also run Program Agency, which is a creative, strategic brand and marketing agency. And both those things, I think, are driven by a love of kind of building communities around ideas. That's what I am really interested in, really like doing.
Cool, great. So I think the theme we're kind of focus on a lot today is around where the tech sector in the Southwest is going, the current kind of state of it, and infused in that is undoubtedly going to be some stuff around AI because it is like the hot topic.
AI, what's that stand for? Never heard of it.
So did you want to start off by just giving us your kind of take on where the tech sector is in the Southwest at the moment as a kind of as an industry?
So I think overall the sector, we're more joined up than ever before. We've got a stronger voice than ever before, and Tech Southwest is just one player in that journey, which is fantastic. We've got over 18,000 tech companies in the southwest of England, and one of the challenges is that we're on average we're small. You know, there's about 10 people is an average size of a tech company. But also that is a tremendous advantage, I think. And also a tremendous advantage in this new era that we're entering around AI and the speed of change, you know, if we get this right. So I think it's a healthy sector. There are some challenges in terms of sort of within that, in terms of, investment, in terms of some of the challenges of, not just for our region, but for all regions across the UK in terms of the time it takes for the buyer to say yes, the procurement systems, the openness and willingness of bigger organisations to say yes and back the small players. You know, not everyone should be having to do the buying and selling in London, and the Southwest is trying to flip that model. Because we know, you know, across those companies, there are amazing, companies ranging from the sort of the quantum and the deep tech and the really sophisticated kind of within their niche, playing out nationally and globally, to kind of more generalistic companies as well. So we've got strengths in that, and if you layer in the clean tech, the blue and green economy piece, because of the Southwest, in terms of the kind of companies the people that are attracted here, the companies, the strengths of our universities, you know, that's a good thing to have when we face a climate crisis. In terms of we have got companies trying to solve global problems, you know, and they need to think globally from the outset. So I think it's healthy. But I think there are some fundamental challenges, and I hear it time and time again about the companies, you know, frustrated about the growth sort of trajectory, some of those funding challenges around that and supporting around that, and decision making and how slow it can be. But people love it here. People can build great tech companies here, and the people here, either they're sort of moving from the outside in, or they're here, or they're returning. They want to stay here, and a sort of solid, strong talent pool and pipeline is a very powerful thing, actually, as a sector to bring. As long as it's being fed with new people all the time. So I think it's a good base. I think there's lots more to do, but I think, you know, we're much further on than we were, say, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, and our universities form obviously quite a big part of that, and with that talent pipeline especially, but also they feed into a certain technical heritage that's fairly unique in the Southwest, which is based on the Met Office and Exeter University, Bristol University having like quite strong old school AI machine learning heritages that actually predate a lot of the modern sort of the last 2 or 3 years of Gen AI boom. Actually, this really strong heritage of old school AI that sits there that we've actually been really specialising in a lot in the region.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Rick. And actually, if you layer the new AI onto that, you know, that's a really fantastic position to be in as well. And since we saw it within the last 24 hours at that Tech Southwest Growth Forge Accelerator, our first day at UE Future Space, the AI cohort, the AI accelerator, 20 companies in that room, age range of the founders from 21 to 65. mean, that's really interesting as a cohort, actually, in terms of people who've been around the block. And it's hard to then deliver a program because not everyone's at the same stage, but the cross-learning and the cross-opportunities in that mix, in terms of the kind of technology we're going to build, the Southwest has that mix. So again, that I think is a nice, as you say, it's a nice layer of what we've got, that technical heritage already in the Southwest, so not every region has.
Yeah, and I've met several really great serial entrepreneurs in the region who I think really kind of keep cycling through, like bringing the experience to bear, but being really open-minded to the new stuff that's coming out and developing that. And that plays a little bit back to your average company size stat that you put. It's, generally quite small companies. There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm in this region for sort of giving birth to and growing up companies through adolescence. That it's great for the national economy in terms of, like, that's actually the growth hub of a lot of the UK economy.
Yeah, we're that nation of shopkeepers, and I suppose the big question in terms of for AI, is it going to be the big, corporations and the others who can spend vast amounts of money on this as they kind of adopt, they learn how to use it, what they need it for, etc. And is it going to be the domain for them, or is it going to be the smaller companies? Into the use cases on your own organisations, and then of course selling into those markets. Because I think if we can get it right, there is a real opportunity. Because nimble, smaller organisations can try things, can test things, can learn, can break it, can go again, and from that can come really cool solutions which you can scale rapidly. So whereas bigger organisations will ring fence. I've worked in those big corporates. They will create little projects over here in a sort of incubation thing here, or an innovation team here, and they'll play with it, and it might roll out. But if you're talking, tens of thousands of people, firewalls, all of that, they will do it at a certain pace, and I understand that. But that is an opportunity for the sort of army, the tribe of Southwest tech companies, in terms of trying to, that sort of laboratory of learning and playing and making things, that Gyson will be familiar with, and others, in terms of, we can do that. That's what we do, and the challenge is then how you then sort of scale those companies. That's the thing I think the Southwest needs to sort of work out in terms of how we support those ones once they're on that journey, once we've found those winners in amongst that. But we are certainly going to be a great test bed for all these kind of things playing out. It's then how you then find those, support them, support them on the sort of selling into the bigger players to magnify the impact and help them on that scaling journey.
Yeah. So over the last sort of 2.5 years since ChatGPT first came out, and like the big AI boom, it certainly seems to have favoured agility and smallness of companies in order to kind of seize that and do the entrepreneurial thing, find the gap, find a product market fit, make it happen. It certainly seemed to stand to bear above the big corporates who are much slower moving.
Yeah.
But what I think is interesting is to think about whether that pace of change is going to continue. So, and the signs are actually it's carrying on. I mean, I look at what ChatGPT could do 2.5 years ago and what it can do now. It's radically different, actually.
Yeah.
And so if that pace of change is going to keep going, like maybe that's going to play into the hands of the smaller organisation a little bit more.
I think so. One of the big challenges is sort of sticking in your lane, what you're really good at. The human knowledge plus the technology, or kind of going in all sorts of different directions. And there's a difference between pivoting and sort of spreading yourself too thinly with this stuff. So I think it's going to take some good leadership to sort of navigate your own company through this and understand the opportunities and your capabilities and what you're going to build and how you deploy it. My own agency, I know we need to get more technical expertise. We definitely do. We've come from the more traditional side of strategic brand and marketing and comms, and that's what we're doing now, in terms of partnering with other agencies, bringing in technical people, to layer in all of that, because we've gone on our own journey in terms of, playing with it, learning how to use it, deploying it in our existing clients, building individual, sort of ChatGPT channels, etc., training it on the messaging, the brand foundation stay the same. You've got to know all of that stuff to train the AI, and then off you go. And now, if you then layer in the technical, so I think there's going to be loads more sort of cross collaborations and opportunities, because, the other thing I think is if you build something that's so pure around the AI, enough you let it go and play and let it go and do things, the big question we should all be asking as entrepreneurs is, but is there another AI or an AI that's just going to do it better, quicker, faster, the things I've missed, because if it's then you're just not going to bother building it. So that human AI interface is the bit that really interests me in terms of as a Tech Southwest community. What does that look like in terms of that human AI interface? Because we're about a community around a set of ideas, and for program as an agency, creative agency, that human AI interface. What does that look like? What does that mean? What is the opportunity when you've got a load of creatives, brand experts, marketing experts, and the AI layer together? What does that start to look like? And that's definitely the journey we're on.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the Southwest has some interesting combinations of some of the pure deep tech type stuff. We've got Isambard AI, the supercomputer being built, right here in Bristol, the most powerful compute resource in the UK, like really big piece of kit, and a lot of deep academic research. But actually, we've got some very specific domain applications within green tech, blue tech, marine, aerospace, those sort of things, really strong in the region. And lots of really practical people just working on practical problems around the space as well. I guess it's the coming together of those that's actually...
I think the coming together of those and the coming together of the techies and the non-techies. Because, we sit in a city like Bristol with a supercomputer well on its way, with lots of deprived wards, with a transport, challenge around movement of traffic, and with all sorts of social issues, and every part of the region will have different layers of that. So, what we've got to be mindful of, the AI, we can get super excited about that as another layer of our technology, and very different to anything we've ever seen before in terms of the democratic nature of it and our ability to access it and do things with it. At the same time as we already have a bit of a digital divide. 2 million people in the UK don't really have access to the internet. Okay, so if you think about that, in terms of what does that mean for a nation and a culture and a society, how do we, where are we going to sort of spend our time and our resources? What kind of problems we're going to try and solve as businesses and as governments around some of this stuff? Because there's the sort of shoot for the stars, amazing stuff we can do, and this, and this. There's sort of making sure our own businesses thrive in this environment. And then there are the communities we live in and the society we live in as well, and whether it's the culture and the artistic nature of us as human beings, or the kind of we just want to be good neighbours and help each other and those kind of things. And AI can help us do a lot of those things, but not if we don't have to think about the language we use, the people who are involved in that conversation, because otherwise it's going to just widen gaps that are already very evident, I think, in society.
Yeah, and that digital divide is kind of a bit scary in terms of, if we think that people are getting left behind by not being connected to the internet very effectively, then what about people just not being on the kind of AI awareness spectrum at all? Just literally not using it at all in their daily lives, in their workplays, and does that mean that their skills will just massively devalue, or is that something they can catch back up on?
Well, and I don't know. I mean, Microsoft say it's a £500 billion, $500 billion opportunity for the UK, for the next 10 years, in terms of if we fully utilised AI to its maximum potential of what we know today across the entire nation. In terms of GVA, value added, in terms of, so that's incredible, but that relies on millions of people getting some digital skills and understanding it at the same time when, I don't know, the Daily Star will put the rise of the robots on the front page and say it's coming to take our jobs. So there's a huge trust element to this. I spent years working in strategic comms in the energy sector, and if you lose the trust of people, they're not going to engage. And that comes down to language, like productivity and efficiency gains, because that can be an exciting word as a leader of a team, of an organisation, and that can also be a scary word for a person who says, "Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean for me and my job?" Productivity. Well, there's 3 of us at the moment. Maybe there'll only be 1 of us in a year's time. So we've got to think really carefully about the language we use, and I see huge opportunity, but there's also huge risk, and there's going to be massive change in the type of businesses that exist, and who's going to be in the game and who's not.
That's a really good point about language. I get very excited about thinking in terms of productivity, because I think the UK's got a really long historical productivity issue. We've been struggling to get our per GDP capita up because of productivity constraints, and AI is potential to improve productivity is absolutely massive. So I'm like, those two obviously go together. Let's do this and move on. But that language is probably quite scary to some.
Yeah. And it's sort of what we choose to do with that productivity. We know that innovation in this country, if you look at the stats, is declining. The number of companies who invest and what they invest in innovation is going down. So if AI frees up resource, is it about companies going, great, we can now get back into the proper skilling people, the innovation piece, all those things, or is it? It's a really tough economy out there. It's really uncertain times. We're just going to, stash that cash. Goodbye to a department. Goodbye to this level. And it's going to be both, I suppose. And which one is going to be the winner? Certainly for society, there's going to be damage done in terms of some of this. But I'm also really optimistic about the opportunity, and we've got to go on this journey. We've got to help companies navigate the change, because if you don't get your head around, the opportunity that this new type of AI, this new accessible type of AI can bring to your organisation, you can bet that a competitor will, and they might be down the road in the southwest, but they're more likely to be, somewhere else in the world. They're going to swoop in, because it's a global market that so many of us, play in. So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the optimist in me sort of hopes that with AI, everything becomes a little bit cheaper, which means that ROI stacks up better, so you can do more. You actually end up doing loads and loads more as a result of the price coming down. But maybe that's my optimistic.
But and what would be interesting is if there was a clone of you, Rick. Can you imagine that? Just imagine that. and a clone of everyone, just pause. Just imagine that. And then we have another. A Geiston sort of another alter. And you could go in two very different paths with that. In terms of this is about enabling our people. The relationship with the client shifts. We're empowering our clients to think differently about what the possibilities, what they can do with their business, and off we go. And it frees up people to sort of do more stuff, to be more playful, more creative, more innovative, strategic partnerships, human relationships, whatever it might be. And then there's another Rick, dark and evil Rick over here, potentially saying, right, that's great because we can strip this down to this, and we're going to stay super lean, and that's going to give me efficiency in the market, and sort of profitability goes up like this. And those figures look great because I've got 18 shareholders that I'm kind of accountable for, and on the figures, look at what I'm doing. I'm squeezing it. So that's two extremes around what you can do with technology, not just AI, but every type of technology we've ever had. And I hope that the good guys win, and also the track. If you look back, often the good guys do win because they're the companies that people want to work for, and they're the ones that are playing the long-term game based on human relationships still. So that's what if you believe in the goodness of human, nature, which is quite hard sometimes in the world at the moment. But if you do believe in that, you think, well, that's the way. They're the ones that are going to win, and I want to be over there with them, and that's what we need, But there's going to be those battles.
Yeah, I think and there's no right answer as well, right? It's all value-based judgment. And and no one knows. It's all bets. We're going to see how it turns out, right?
Yeah, well, no, actually, I do know. I've come back in my time traveling machine, and do you want to know? No, I don't want to spoil the end. I don't want to spoil the big AI.
No spoilers, please, Dan.
But if you read the some of that sci-fi from the 50s, 60s, 70s onwards, it paints a few different pictures, doesn't it, of where it goes?
Exactly.
But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So bringing it back down to earth, tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that are going on in the Southwest. We've got some really invested people, like some from quite big corporates, sorts of local initiatives, all sorts of stuff going on. So do you want to just tell people a little bit about kind of what some of those things? Yeah,
just some examples. And this is all in the context of, I think, what our job is in the Southwest, or what Tech Southwest job is, to try and build the most collaborative tech ecosystem in the UK. Why not? Let's just do that, okay? Easy, tick. But one of the ways you do that is shifting from the nice stuff and the important stuff, but let's do annual awards, let's put out reports, to start to kind of build strong programs of activity. And we have these three pillars. One is business support and innovation, one is funding and finance, one is talent and skills. Because if you nudge a tech company or any type of company in the right direction in those three, ideally all of them, you're going to have a more successful business, a more thriving business, more tax-generating business for the government to put into social services and other things. So that is our starting point. And how do you do that? I think you start to develop really strong programs and you measure. We have to measure. I made this point at the UK Tech Week the other day. It's one of the big things we're not very good at is measuring ourselves. And saying to the government, look, this is the value we provide in terms of the ideation piece, through to the kind of the types of companies, and it's a hard one to get agreement on because everyone's still doing it in different ways. So where we are, so our Growth Forge Accelerator, super excited. We've launched it for year 2. Got some amazing partners and coaches and mentors. We'll have about 70 to 80 companies going through that. Already got over 50 on board, an AI track, marine tech, clean tech, and a core program. So just seeing those at the first growth day, UE Future Space was a real buzz. From very early stage companies to companies sort of several million, sort of planning their succession and exit strategy. So I love that program because it's very different to any other accelerator I know. It's not like module 1, module 2, module 3. Everyone has to do everything. It's apply, get on board, a very big data assessment, 100 data points, and then we understand where you are, what's your weaknesses, all that, and then you can go through that. So that's a great program, and we still want more companies to, it's a bit of an evergreen, to get involved in that. And we report that into government as well. So government are taking an interest in a growth program that we've built ourselves in the southwest of England. So that's a really important thing, and it's a separate, plugged into the universities, but we run it as a business community. I think that's really important because innovation doesn't just happen in universities. In fact, most innovation happens away from universities as a country. We must remember that. So that's just one example of one of those programs that we do. And I don't want to sort of go on a big list of the different things, but those different pillars: Growth Forge Accelerator. We have a funding and finance program. We're going to London in May, taking a load of our companies to Microsoft's HQ. We have investors in the room, AI experts in the room. We're saying, this is what we're doing. Come and join us. We're not going to London saying, this is who we are, we need more money, or this is who we are, and waving a little flag. We're getting on and building an ecosystem. Our companies are going global in small ways and in big ways, because they're solving global problems. So things like that, we just got to get on and do these things and see who wants to play that. I call it ruthless collaboration. We're a small team at Tech Southwest, and so we've got to work with partners around all these different things, and that's what we do. But you've got to also start to learn and says what works, what doesn't, and programmatic methods, be that Growth Forge, funding and finance. We've got to work out that program. We've got a program this year with some events, investor briefing reports and other things, but investment funds are now starting to talk to us. I get 2 requests a week for meetings with investment funds. So that's a good sign. But I'm still like, what do we do with this? How do we sort of turn it into a program that we can measure rather than have a conversation, after a connection on LinkedIn, understand what kind of companies are looking for, and I sort of lodge it somewhere. There's an AI solution screaming out to help me with that, I'm sure. So that's the kind of thing we're doing. We have our annual awards. We've got a big tech conference coming up in June around digital transformation, where I want as many non-tech companies in the room as tech companies. We've never done that before because we're here talking about tech. And of course, some of the biggest gains and some of the most interesting things that are going to happen are the interface between the tech sector and the non-tech sectors. You think about the Southwest.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's easy to get lost in our own echo chamber sometimes, isn't it?
It is, Rick. Yeah. It is. I know.
When you're only talking to people in the tech sector, I could go through a week thinking, everyone in the world is like fully familiar with every single of the latest AI models that are out there, is using them on a regular day-to-day basis. That's the part of the world I see, but the reality is the vast majority of people are not there. They're not.
Even in, we've got the second biggest advanced manufacturing sector in the UK, in the southwest of England. Not many people know that. And I was at a very big company with hundreds of people, part of a global group, and I was talking to the head of sales and marketing. We started talking about AI marketing, it was there as program, talking about that. And he said, AI, hang on a minute. I've got to get my MD in. Hang on, calls the MD in. Guy, this company turns over tens and tens of billions. Sits down, 250 workforce. They do amazing technology in their own right. So what do we do with AI? So what do you mean? Well, what do we do with AI? I've got all this. I've got these processes. I've got these production lines. I've got hundreds of people. All this, And that's a golden opportunity. Or it's a real sort of elephant in the room if they don't sort it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
I feel that's a little bit like someone coming up to you in the sort of early 80s and saying, "So what do we do with this computer?"
Yeah. Or the internet. The agencies who kind of no, I'm going to wait and see. I don't know. I'm just going to wait a little bit because we'll see. We'll let a few people go and play in that space first, and they're the ones going, "Oh my God! There's this thing called Google now that's popped up. Oh, you can do this, bit of SEO thing," and of course, off it went, and those who didn't died. So you got to throw yourself into it, and those non-tech parts of the economy are where some of the really interesting things are going to happen, as well as some of the risks around this. And if Tech Southwest, we kind of have this dilemma: so do we stick in our lane and working with the tech companies and supporting them? Yes. But the whole kind of linking back to the digital divide and actually productivity, some of the biggest productivity gains we can do is probably thinking about how we layer all you guys, all the tech companies into other sectors, because all our work does not have to, it's not hub and spoke with London anymore. It's certainly not. It's about the companies down the road that need our help, because there are amazing companies everywhere in the Southwest, and if we can improve that interface and build that trust, that is a brilliant marketplace we have in terms of just buying local as tech. That's just sort of an opportunity there, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as an organisation, Guston, very much believe in the value of not just buying local as in feeding your own community, but also the benefit that brings in terms of close collaboration and actual like day-to-day communication and the way you work. I think is just, I'm still a really strong believer in sitting next to someone and looking at them in 3 dimensions and actually having that conversation.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm here, Rick, in that 3D reality that guys are operating here in Bristol. So absolutely. I think that's going to be at the heart of business, and it's part of our human advantage that we have.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about some of those partnerships. One that always piques my interest a little bit is Microsoft. Partly because
here we go. Okay, come on.
To the podcast
thumbs
soon.
up or down?
Well, I have to put a thumbs up because one of my near-term guests on the podcast is going to be Richard Potter from Microsoft. And I know he speaks really fondly of the region, and Microsoft actually has quite a strong commitment to doing stuff here. And obviously, big corporates, you can say anything about them. There's very mixed opinion. But I think to shun them out of the conversation is just to lose a voice.
Totally. I mean, they're a social value partner of ours, and when we start speaking to people like AWS and Microsoft, and the ones we've decided to work with are the ones who would come down and see us, because there was one big corporate, owned by a multi-billionaire in the US, through their representative that covered the southwest of England, who wouldn't come here, and so if you're not going to come to the southwest and talk about building a program together. We're not going to work with you, forget it. Whereas Microsoft came down and we've literally, they've walked through the fields of Devon with farmers looking at tech, looking at agri-tech. They've done those things. They've kind of, got into, they've come down to the Ocean Fest at Plymouth, 2 days of Ocean Expo stuff and talked to those marine tech companies, and Microsoft was a huge brand, but they haven't got tens and tens of thousands of people in the UK. So it's that commitment. And we persuaded them, don't just layer on what you do in isolation to what the region needs. Listen, understand what we're building from the grassroots, plug into things like Growth Forge rather than, they've got Founders Hub, which is a fantastic program, but they don't talk about that too much here other than, through Growth Forge and through the other things, and then it sort of segues in. So it's a much better way of doing it, for us and for them in terms of the nuances and all of that. And what I love, one of the things that, I think maybe Richard just said it, is because they work in Manchester, on a big digital kind of capital of the UK. They work here and elsewhere. And one of the things I say about the Southwest is, you guys and girls build real tech, And I think that what they mean about that is the universities, the hardware and the software. Some of these things that you talk about, Rick, in terms of the strength of the region around the sort of quantum and the deep tech. We build real technology, and that excites, the likes of Microsoft. And the other thing is, as an ecosystem builder, we've got to have the bigger corporates in. If you read any of the literature in America, it's a classic book I think called The Startup Community Way, all about Boulder, population of 100,000, so smaller than Exeter, amazing tech sector. How do they do it? They put founders at the heart, and you need the universities, you need the councils and all the others, but you need the corporates as well. You need the corporates to be curious to what's going on there, the innovation, the talent, and the Southwest struggles with some of that. So we need to think about how we have bigger companies and bigger players coming into the region or looking at this sort of ecosystem we're building to be curious about that. Because it's one of the foundational elements, and that's one of our weaknesses in terms of there aren't too many ready-made that we've built within the region ourselves, so we've got to attract them in.
Yeah, always work to be done, I think.
But this time next year.
It would be boring if we'd have done it all though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's the interesting thing about, we're all parts of a we're kind of running our own organisations, and you've got to stay true to that and looking after your people and supporting your people, your clients. Once you get into the realm of building ecosystems, it's like biology, it's like a petri dish, right? And so you can't, so it's a bit amoebus, and the boundaries are blurred, and perspectives are different. So I really love that. because I'm a bit messy around the edges.
Yeah.
Not just the state of my dress, but just generally in my life. And I quite like that because the edge is where good things happen, interesting things happen, relationships, people, conversations. It's why we love living in the Southwest, on the edge. And I always say, tech from the edge, tech from the cutting edge.
So we've got our Petri dish that's growing, and we're in the experimental lab. We get to feed it, so we can't really control exactly. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen. We get to feed it with certain things, and then we kind of see what happens. Yeah. So tell me, what do you think we need to feed it with at the moment? What are the kind of key things we're putting in, and how do you think it's going to grow out?
That is a great question, and that's a great way of sort of describing it, I think. So you've got to have the people in there who are curious, and you can't just leave it to the techies. You need a mix of people in there, different types of organizations. I made this point at the Microsoft AI World Tour up in Excel on a roundtable a couple of weeks ago, which was full of big corporates. Remember the voice of the little company, remember the voice of the primary school, remember the voice of the single solo entrepreneur as well as the bigger organization. So I definitely think in that mix, we've got to have a representation of our society around that, female, male, ages, all of that, because we know tech has been dominated for too long by white men. Started in America and that still ripples out. So we've got to change that into the kind of tech we build and create and what have you. And then we've got to be, I suppose, very open to where this goes. Don't try and shut things down. Don't try and do too much in isolation. One of the amazing things you've seen with the AI in terms of large language models is that open sort of democratic way of using it. Just just jump on this for free, play, learn, grab it, integrate it into your website, into your own tools. So I think we've got to probably to make that Petri dish bigger, we've got to sort of somehow break down the edges of it and let it sort of, because it's going to multiply. But I think there's core ingredients. I think it's curiosity. Because the digital skills, the funding, those things, but the human, why we set out from the Southwest to kind of go around the world. The Mayflower and all, that whole tradition we have, for good and bad and things that happen around that, but that curiosity, the human nature, the curiosity. So we've got to keep that at the heart, and I suppose layer in, keep asking the why in terms of society and culture, because AI can do some great things, but it can also do some bad things. So that's what I think I want in my Petri dish, Rick. I think we need loads and loads of curiosity little dots, and we need a kind of, this is where a biologist is like Harry Singer is going to pull me up in terms of getting the terms right. But some of those membranes or other things in terms of the why we definitely need in there as well. And an innovation ecosystem. We don't do enough on innovation. We root a lot of it in the university, which is fantastic. But we need to think about the innovation now that a kid can have an idea in a secondary school in Bristol, or can have walking down a lane in Somerset or Dorset. The tools are there now to take that innovation and turn it into a business within a month, say, or to turn it into a product, or turn it into something which can then be scalable or marketable. That is amazing, right? It's not about slogging. It's not about telling someone, no, that'd be ridiculous. How do we encourage that? We've got to get out into the schools. We've got to deliver amazing work experience programs and opportunities that can speed up that innovation piece, because the ideas won't just be from behind our desk. In fact, the best ideas are never from behind our desk. It's out there in the real world. So let's put the whole real world in there as well, Rick, okay? And then we'll go from there.
Petri dish.
It's a freaking massive Petri dish at this point, Rick. Is there anything you want to add into the Petri dish?
I think you really put the nail on the head with the curiosity. I think that the rise of Gen AI in particular is really feeding the curious. Curiosity is now the ingredient that allows you to, so the technical barriers to entry, the sort of cost barriers to entry are all lowering and dissolving. So the key ingredient to entrepreneurism now, I think, is curiosity and just trying something and giving it a go. And the cost and risk associated with that is much less, which is fantastic from a diversity and inclusion kind of perspective, because it's just much more accessible. So I think that's great, but I think we also need to recognise that not everyone's an entrepreneur. Not everyone kind of has that mentality. So it does get me thinking about what for the rest of the population. And for that, I think there is a certain level of sort of malleability and needs to change that we're going to demand of some people, which is going to be harder for some than others. So I think it's kind of the responsibility of the entrepreneur and the people who's leading the vision forwards to not leave everyone else
Yeah.
behind,
Yeah.
and to carry people with them. And I think in the Southwest there is a wonderful communal spirit
Yeah.
that I think will really help us to do that. Whereas I think, I look around other parts of the world, and particularly some of the stuff that's happening in the news and so on at the moment, where it's a much more selfish attitude of like, I'm just going to further me. And I'm really optimistic that the Southwest isn't going to follow that path, because that's not kind of in our heart. And I think we will bring along the people who stand to gain a huge amount, and to enrich our lives as entrepreneurs as well, by having them along our side and including them.
Yeah, and that's how we build things. Program we're building an AI for Marketing Academy. Our first program, comes out, and we can't do that ourselves. So we have to team up with other experts and also we need to think about the accessibility of that, and that's for businesses. But also when you think about the school version of that, the online only version of that, these different elements built into our ways of working to kind of open the door as wide as we can, or smash it wide open.
Yeah. So I think the one of the key criteria is around human interconnectivity and how we preserve that in the realm of an increasingly digitized world. And I think I'm optimistic the Southwest is a good place to be for that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that gives us a competitive edge. Us as people, we choose to live here. We choose to live in interesting communities, friendly. We're sort of that whole part of it. When we first set up Tech Southwest, the one thing that united everyone moaned about each other. Bristol Bath had a little thing, Exeter and Plymouth had a little thing, Cornwall had a bit of a thing about everyone east of the Tamar. Somerset had a bit of a identity crisis about, are we Bristol, or are we the West Country, or a bit of both. But everyone said, we're not London. We're definitely not London. And I think what they meant by that is we purposely choose to be here, to build our technology here, to stay here, to raise our families here, to have our friendship groups here, and we want it to succeed here. We don't want to go down the London route. So I think that was a sort of a phrase of saying, we like being here on the edge, we like being here on the cutting edge, we love that community aspect and creative and artistic and entrepreneurial and all those other things that sort of go into that phrase of we do things differently down here. And that can be a competitive advantage if we use that right.
Definitely. And hopefully, the big AI discussion will distract people from which way round to put the jam and cream on a scone.
Well, Rick, that's another whole podcast episode probably, and being from Devon, I know the answer to that.
I won't go there. Definitely won't go there. Dan, thanks very much for joining us on the Giant Minds podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Rick.